Good evening, all of you. I'm privileged to have all of you on this evening. అది లాక్ చేయమని అది మళ్ళీ పేషెంట్స్ వస్తే మిమ్మల్ని పిలుస్తారు
నేను పక్కన పోతున్నాను.
ఆ, అంటే వాళ్ళని ఎవరు రానివ్వమని ఎందుకంటే ఐ ఆల్రెడీ స్టార్టెడ్ హలో
Yes, sir.
జస్ట్ నౌ ఇట్ స్టార్టెడ్ బికాజ్
Yes, sir. It started. You are live.
Yeah. Good evening. I am Dr. Sridhar Kasturi, HOD, Department of Cardiology, Sunshine Hospital. Today we'll be discussing about managing comorbidities in heart failure. So, heart failure is one of the major problems. So, nearly 21 million adults are suffering from heart failure throughout the world. So, it's associated with very high mortality. Almost 50% of the people are going to die at the end of the fifth year. So it has a huge economical burden and repeat hospitalization, that frequent hospitalizations are very common with the heart failure, because whenever a patient suffers from heart failure and compensated, decompensated, again in compensated phase, then on drugs is stabilized, again it gets decompensated. Repeated hospitalizations very common in congestive cardiac failure. And many times these patients will have many associated comorbidities which will determine the prognosis as well as the treatment options. So there are many comorbidities which will impact the prognosis of patients with heart failure. For example, so there may be associated lung disease. Patient may be having a hypertension or coronary artery disease, or there may be a renal dysfunction, or diabetes mellitus, severe iron deficiency anemia, obesity. Sometimes they may have, because of prolonged illness, depression, and antidepressant drugs may have an adverse effect on the prognosis of congestive cardiac failure. Similarly, sleep disturbances like a sleep apnea syndrome, obesity, leading to further aggravation of the congestive cardiac failure, and cancer, that is because metastasis or myocardial involvement, or because of the cancer chemotherapy or radiotherapy affecting the congestive cardiac failure adversely. So these are some of the comorbid conditions which can alter the prognosis of or alter the treatment options. So drugs also sometimes it can change the way you are treating. Suppose a patient is having a COPD, like a bronchial asthma is there. When you use the beta blockers, they may worsen the condition. Similarly, suppose if the patient is having a renal failure because the bilateral renal dysfunction, bilateral renal arteriostosis, and leading to severe hypertension, renal cardiac failure, renal failure, or cardiac failure as with renal disease. So these ACE inhibitors, ARB, you have to be very careful in using these in these type of patients. Sometimes they may affect the potassium imbalance, hyperkalemia may take place. And most comorbidities are associated with very high risk status. So it all depends upon the how you treat, how you evaluate the comorbidities. That is very important in the management of congestive cardiac failure. There are 10 principles for successful treatment of heart failure management. So first, always choose the guideline-directed medical treatment. What are the guideline-directed medical treatment? As you all aware, in congestive failure, you treat them with ACE inhibitor or ARB, combination of beta blockers, MRI, antagonists. Similarly, RNA therapy, recently introduced RNA therapy, diuretic therapy, and sometimes you can evaporate in combinations, or really still resistant. You may think of the wide QRS complexes are there, severe dysfunction is there, refractory severe LV dysfunction, ejection fraction less than 35%, they may get benefit with the CRT also. So always when you use the drugs try to use optimal doses and see that the if they are able to tolerate, give the maximum tolerable doses to get the best possible benefit. And always try to uptitrate and use the drugs which are with the less side effects and try to use the combinations to get the best possible outcome. And suppose if the patient is not responding, if you are not familiar with the treatment, refer to the specialists who are dealing with these type of conditions. And always, sometimes even hospitals also should have a heart team approach and specialists who can evaluate and deal with the heart failure. And you can refer that team and they can effectively manage it. And adherence of the drugs are very, very important. Sometimes the patient may not take drugs adequately and regularly. So irregular treatment or inadequate doses also adversely affect the prognosis and worsening of the symptoms. So these are all very, very important, and see that you are giving a cost-effective treatment. Suppose if the patient has come from rural area and his financial resources are limited, don't give with very expensive medications. Even if you write 1-2 months, he may spend that money and he may buy some medicines, but in the long run, because the excess cost, he may not be able to afford the treatment. He may discontinue treatment or he may take the smaller doses. So ultimately, he may not get the maximal benefit of the congestive heart failure treatment. So always identify the comorbidities and treat them effectively. That is very, very important. What are the common conditions which are the comorbidities? Like many times they may have a coronary artery disease, atrial fibrillation, valvular disease like a mitral regurgitation, aortic stenosis, hypertension, dyslipidemia, peripheral vascular disease, cerebral vascular disease. So, for example, evaluate these conditions properly and manage effectively. When you manage them, what happens sometimes, congestive cardiac failure, like suppose the patient with coronary artery disease having an LV dysfunction severely. LV dysfunction may be reversible or irreversible. Reversible LV dysfunction, suppose if the patient is having a viable myocardium with a decreased blood supply, that is ischemia, but myocardium is viable. If all three vessels are diseased or any one major vessel, like a type 3 LAD, proximally occluded with significant viable myocardium, if you revascularize, his LV function will improve. Left main with a high syntax score, patient is having a severe dysfunction. If you revascularize, his function is going to improve. These are reversible. Suppose the large myocardial infarct led to myocardial death and loss of viability. In these conditions, because it's irreversible, because maximum myocardium is lost, and these patients only should be treated with guideline-directed medications. So, like ACE inhibitor, beta blocker combinations, and MRA antagonist combination, and ideally in the early stage only switch on to RNA therapy to get the best possible outcome, and with the diuretic combinations. So, whenever there is an atrial fibrillation, there is a 5-fold increase in the risk of stroke. So, in the congestive cardiac failure, if the patient is having atrial fibrillation, it's a mandatory to use the novel oral anticoagulants, or even you can vitamin K anticoagulants you can use. Suppose the structural disease is there, like a mitral regurgitation, aortic stenosis there. Whether any transcatheter therapy or surgical valve replacement is useful or not, evaluated. That's the example you have to treat. Hypertension is there, adequately treat dyslipidemia and treat with like a statin dose. See that LDL is less than 70 So these are all very important. As per the guidelines, you treat these associated conditions adequately. Like a peripheral vascular disease, most often associated, and by treating peripheral disease, congestive cardiac failure may not going to improve. The condition of the congestive cardiac failure outcome will not change. But why? Because most of the time these patients will have a extensive atherosclerotic disease. In addition to the coexistence is very high. Similarly, evaluate peripheral vascular disease and if needed endovascular therapy or bypass graft so that the outcome related to the peripheral vascular disease will come. Similarly, cerebral vascular disease may be because of the embolic events or it may be because of the coexistent atherosclerotic disease leading to cerebral stroke. So evaluate and treat accordingly. The lung condition, one of the common condition which is associated with congestive cardiac failure is lung condition. Because the chronic smoker, COPD, or chronic bronchial asthma, or restrictive lung disease can increase the pulmonary resistance. pH will develop gradually. They go into right heart failure, so it worsens. So patient is having a congestive cardiac failure lung condition because hypoxemia is there. That itself frustrates the imbalance between demand and supply further worsen the congestive cardiac because already lung is compromised with pulmonary edema. Again, further aggravation of further exacerbation of hypoxemia that lead to bad outcome. So, in addition to congestive cardiac failure, you have to address the treatment of the chronic lung disease. Diabetes treat up adequately with preferably SGL2 inhibitors because these drugs have proven beyond doubt. These drugs reduce the hospitalization rate and at the same time improve the MACE rate and chronic renal disease. And regarding chronic renal disease, whether to give ACE inhibitor or not, ARBs should be given or not, how about the warning, and these should be evaluated. Many times iron deficiency is underestimated and it has to be addressed. And usual, particularly in females, thyroid disorders, hypo or hyper, can exacerbate or it can lead to congestive cardiac failure. Sleep apnea, like obesity, as obesity is a congestive cardiac, and there is one study. You reduce the weight by regular exercise and what happens by diet, exercise, you can prevent the congestive cardiac failure. That is also very, very important. So you can alleviate the symptoms of congestive cardiac failure by doing regular isotonic exercise. Graded, it has to be under moderate. And at the same time, you can also improve the aerobic activity so that the oxygenation levels will be better and prognosis will be better. Obesity, because the sleep apnea syndrome, very resistant hypertension, indirectly hypoxia, carbon dioxide narcosis, acidosis. Again, these people are also prone to or exacerbation of this one. So treatment, one is most of the time congestive cardiac failure will have a edema, either lung pulmonary edema or JLVP elevated or anasarca, bilateral pedal edema. And when edema is there, treat them with diuretic therapy. And the risk factors always control aggressively and adequately. Hypertension, CAD, obesity, you have to take care of this. And comorbidities have to be addressed like anemia, CKD, COPD, depression, diabetes. Because depression very common in congestive cardiac because of the repeated suffering, long-standing nature, and loss of appetite, vomitings, anorexia. Because all these, many of these patients are depressed, so they need a lot of psychological counseling. And drugs should not be don't use too many antidepressants, which can cause prolonged QT and sudden cardiac death, myocardial toxicity. All these things are very, very important in evaluating and managing patients with congestive cardiac failure. And neurohormonal activation, these are very useful for diastolic dysfunction in patients, like modulating sympathetic outflow or vagal and inputs. These are all very, very important in managing the patients with diastolic dysfunction. Iron deficiency is I will emphasize mainly on some of the conditions which are highly prevalent and which are we are going to ignore most of the time, all these conditions and the evaluation. So don't pay a lot of attention in detecting and evaluating iron deficiency in patients with congestive cardiac failure, because studies have shown very clearly if you address this problem, the MACE rate is low, outcome will be better. And many times it's underdiagnosed and neglected. Is a very important comorbid condition which has to be addressed. This is seen in 50% of patients with heart failure, iron deficiency anemia. And if you see the incidence of iron deficiency anemia, that is prevalence, if you see 61% in United States, 37 to 50% in Europe, and Singapore, it's about 61%, and Singapore Indian, the prevalence is 82%. So there is alarming burden of iron deficiency in patients suffering from heart failure, even in India also. An average 8 to 10 million individuals are affected by heart failure in India. So out of 8 to 10 millions, 6 to 8 million patients are suffering from iron deficiency anemia. That means a major comorbid condition. So ESC heart failure guidelines have clearly emphasized on detecting the iron deficiency and managing the iron deficiency anemia. This can cause because the carrying capacity, oxygen carrying capacity is low because the low HB levels. They will have a decreased exercise capacity, and quality of life definitely will be poor, and it carries a worse prognosis. And intravenous ferric carboxy maltase should be given when serum ferritin is less than 100 micrograms per liter, or ferritin is between 100 to 229 micrograms per liter, and transferrin saturation less than 20%. So if patient is having a ferritin level of less than 100 micrograms per liter, or if the ferritin value between 100 to 229 micrograms per liter, and with the transferrin saturation less than 20%, these patients should be subjected for IV ferric carboxy maltase therapy. So these are based upon the FAIR heart failure trial, confirmed heart failure trial, and definitely these trials have shown very beneficial. So this is a meta-analysis. Meta-analysis has shown very clearly those patients who were treated with the iron therapy, you can see the significant reduction in the cardiovascular hospitalization and cardiovascular death, 69% versus 92%, and heart failure hospitalization cardiovascular death, 39% versus 60%. Cardiovascular hospitalization and all-cause death also very low in patients who were treated with iron therapy, like a 71%, 74%. So all-cause hospitalization, all-cause death, 108 patients, that is 36% versus 52%. That means it has a very good prognosis, and these patients should be given with IV iron therapy. So whenever a patient is having a chronic heart failure with a reduced ejection fraction, and when they are in a class 2-4 New Heart Association, and that's check for iron deficiency first. What is the ferritin value? Take ferritin value, take the transferrin saturation, also very important. So and accordingly you can check hemoglobin, and hemoglobin is less than 13, or females less than 12 grams, you can give the IV therapy. And always exclude the any other cause of anemia. This is very important because in elderly patients, there may be occult bleed, occult liver gel, maybe because of any carcinoma, or upper GI bleed because of the bleeding peptic ulcer. So rule out the associated cause of anemia if and address these conditions accordingly. There is a chart. According to chart, you can give the IV therapy, that is 500 to 1000 milligrams in a single dose. Suppose HB is less than 10 gram per deciliter and weight is less than 35 kg, you can give 500 milligrams. And if the patient weight is between 35 and 70 kg, you can give 1500 milligrams IV. And more than 70 kg, you can give it 2000. Same if a patient is having a HB of 10 to 14 grams per deciliter, you can give a 500 milligram bolus, or 35 to 70, you can give a 1000. So based upon the chart, you can give this. And subsequently, and 3 months later, you check the ferritin and based upon that, again, transferrin saturation, again, based upon that, you can take a call whether to repeat the dose or that. Usually, studies have shown the oral therapy is not that effective in reducing the mortality rate, MACE rate. Now, CKD, majority of the patients with congestive cardiac failure may also have associated CKD. And both conditions together may really, it affects very badly the prognosis of the patients. CKD is now pandemic and affects more than 16% of adult population. It's not less common, it's very common condition only, and a common comorbidity in patients with heart failure. And the coexistence of heart failure and CKD will increase the toxic manifestations of various diagnostic and therapeutic measures. Why? Because many times congestive cardiac with the coronary artery disease, you want to control the congestive cardiac failure, and subsequently you may subject them for angiography to see any reversible causes there. Suppose the patient is having a severe triple valve disease or left main with triple valve disease, and these patients, LV dysfunction leading to congestive cardiac failure. And once you control the failure, you want to do the angiogram. So when you give the contrast, that is also with renal toxicity. And excess direct use also, sometimes because of the oligemia, it can press the renal function further. So always when you give the renal, severe renal dysfunction, you can't give the standard ACE inhibitor. Sometimes it may be contraindicated. If hyperkalemia, when you combine the aldosterone antagonist and this one combinations. In such conditions, you have to carefully monitor the creatinine. You have to carefully monitor the serum potassium while giving a treatment. So more than 40% of the heart failure patients have a CKD, and this will affect the prognosis adversely. And if you see here, all cause and cardiovascular disease specific mortality risk increased with increasing multimorbidity. So if you see, if the only heart failure is there, risk is less when you compare with when you have a heart failure associated with CKD and associated with type 2 diabetes. That is the bottom. And when compared to that, if in one instead of one only patient having a simple heart failure versus patient with heart failure, with the diabetes and CKD and heart failure have worse prognosis. So number of comorbidities are more, the prognosis is much worse. Always evaluate if the diabetes there, address the diabetes aggressively, and CKD also take the nephrologist opinion, and what are the drugs which are which can be used ideally with what are the best therapeutic doses, and you discuss with them. And diabetes also in the management, you take the help of the endocrinologist and ask them which are the drugs which are very useful in patients with heart failure, which are the antibiotic drugs which are very safe from cardiac point of view, particularly in congestive those drugs have to be given priority in managing these patients. Similarly, how does RNA impact on the renal safety? So this RNA has picked up very well, particularly when patients are having congestive cardiac failure, almost 20% reduction in the mortality rate compared to ACE inhibitor therapy. So compared to isolated ACE inhibitor therapy, RNA has reduced the mortality rate further by 20% in paradigm trial. So they tried enalapril versus they tried the RNA therapy, that is valsartan plus sacubitril combination. So almost 16 to 20% reduction in the mortality rate. So that's the reason the RNA. How does it? What is the relation about the renal failure and renal safety, or parameters? Are they going to increase or worsen? So there is no significant difference in progression of the renal dysfunction with RNA therapy when compared with enalapril. So it slows the progression of the renal dysfunction and improve the clinical outcome even in patients with CKD. So RNA can slows the progression of the renal dysfunction and improve the clinical outcomes even in patients with a CKD patient. That is a very important factor. And compared to enalapril, this sacubitril and valsartan combination, it slower the rate of decrease in GFR. So there is slow fall in the GFR and improved cardiovascular outcomes even in patients with chronic injury. This is very, very important. So the safety is there with the RNA compared to the ACE inhibitors. And in the presence of ACE inhibitors, it may enhance the ability to use MRA safely. And compared to ACE inhibitors, the RNA therapy enhance the ability to use the MRA safely. Why? Because the tendency to develop hyperkalemia is less. That is very important. So when you combine the ACE inhibitors, ARBs with MRA, MRA antagonists, definitely they have chance of hyperkalemia, but that risk is like less compared to that RNA compared to with ACE inhibitors. And the change in GFR, I told you that GFR fall is much slower compared to ACE inhibitor, and the change in the serum potassium also favorable compared to the ACE inhibitors. So 50% of the diabetic patients will have a heart failure during their lifetime. So 50% of the patients are prone for heart failure. So heart failure, suppose diabetics are developing heart failure, there is almost 10%, almost tenfold increase in the risk of mortality. So if the patient is having a heart failure, diabetes, you can assume that there is a tenfold increase in the risk of the heart failure related death. And 5-year survival is only 12.5%. That means the association of heart failure or development of heart failure in patients with the diabetes indicates the prognosis is very worse, and at the same time the event rates are going to be very, very high. Though there is a marked increase in the mortality and a very, very high mortality rate and a shorter survival rate. Heart failure can cause a recurrent hospitalization, and the quality of life is very poor, and it is associated with a very high mortality rate. And how does it affect? Diabetes can cause altered free fatty acid metabolism, impaired myocyte calcium sensitivity, and microvascular dysfunction, neurohormone abnormalities like a renin-angiotensin sympathetic system activation, and cardiac autonomic dysfunction, because diabetes has with autonomic neuropathy dysfunction and hyperglycemic cellular damage that may lead to altered myocyte metabolism, endothelial dysfunction, myocyte necrosis, left ventricular hypertrophy, fibrosis, relaxation, that means testicular dysfunction, alter compliance of the ventricles, and so all this will lead to either systolic diastolic dysfunction, and that may lead to congestive failure. So cardiomyopathy, diabetes also associated with cardiomyopathy. The SGLT2 inhibitors, these drugs, all these days, many drugs we have been using in diabetes, but as of now, many anti-diabetic drugs are associated with neutral or slightly increase in the cardiovascular outcomes. There is an increase in mortality or neutral effect. But there are no proven drugs which improve the cardiovascular outcome, particularly in patients with congestive failure with the anti-diabetic drug. But SGLT2 inhibitors have shown very clearly very favorable prognosis in patients with congestive failure, particularly in diabetic patients. So diuretics, they act by decreasing the body fluid, decreasing body volume overload, decreasing blood pressure. So what happens when the body fluid reduces blood volume overload less? That means preload is less. When the preload is less, ultimately load on the ventricles is less. Similarly, SGLT2 inhibitors decreases the glucose toxicity by promoting the glucose excretion the renal tubules. So asthmatic diuresis, so the reduction in the blood pressure and body weight, risk of cardiovascular events. So it increases the glucose uric effect because more and more glucose is passed in the urine. Particularly in females, they will have an increased tendency for genitourinary infections. And some patients, they may have a fracture, some patients may have a notice, some gangrene. Those are all very negligible, but most of the data is suggestive of improved cardiovascular outcomes, particularly repeated hospitalizations for heart failure is markedly reduced, and MACE rate is low, and heart failure related admissions are much low. So as per the ADA 2020 guidelines, SGLT2 is the preferred oral hypoglycemic agents in diabetic patients, particularly type 2 diabetic mellitus, in a group of particularly when they have a atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, or if they have a heart failure, or if they are having a CKD. So a diabetic patients with atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, heart failure, CKD, SGLT2 is the inhibitors are preferred group of drugs. These are the first line therapy. Usually we try with the metformin and with a lifestyle modification. And if this high risk group are there, like a ASVD, there are patients having a CKD or heart failure, always try to, in the presence of heart failure or CKD, preferable to give SGLT2 inhibitor, which showed reducing the heart failure and CKD progression and improving the cardiovascular outcome. So empagliflozin should be considered in patients. This is as per the 2016 ESC guidelines. Empagliflozin should be considered in patients with type 2 diabetic mellitus in order to prevent or delay the onset of heart failure and prolong the life. And the DAPA heart failure, DAPA HF trial, it's a game changer. So what happened? They compared with the placebo. The placebo versus dapagliflozin. The primary composite outcome, that is the cardiovascular death, heart failure hospitalization, and urgent heart failure visits. These are significantly lower in dapagliflozin group compared to placebo group. There is a reduction in all-cause death compared to placebo, and the quality of life is much better, and the worsening of heart failure events and death are much lower, more favorable in dapagliflozin group compared to placebo group. So among patients with heart failure and reduced ejection fraction, the risk of worsening heart failure and death from cardiovascular causes was lower among those who received dapagliflozin than among those who received placebo, regardless of the presence or absence of diabetes. So, to summarize the talk, comorbidities are frequent and may be overlooked during routine CHF management. Many times we may not pay attention to the associated comorbid conditions and always pay attention. Like extreme obesity, they pay attention to the reducing the weight. Like COPD, there under the COPD, sleep apnea syndromes, like sleep studies, in addition to decongestive therapy, control even sleep apnea, like sleep studies, whether these patients are required BiPAP, CPAP. All these are all very, very important in managing the patients with congestive cardiac failure. And most importantly, if that diabetes is their heart failure, use this HGL2 and in presence of CKD, aggressively treat congestive failure and see that avoid the toxic doses and intolerable doses and avoid the drugs which can cause harm to the kidney. These things are very important. Take the concerned diabetologist and nephrologist opinion when you are managing diabetes with CKD with congestive cardiac failure. And these are all very, very important in managing. Don't simply treat only congestive cardiac failure and treat associated conditions to improve the overall outcome. Some patient is very high, all the risk factors should be addressed, like hypertension, you have to smoker, stop, alcohol is there. Alcohol worsen the condition, you stop that, and COPD attention, pay, peripheral vascular disease. Is simultaneously evaluate and address it. Though treating the peripheral vascular may not change the outcome of the congestive cardiac failure, but the outcome of peripheral vascular disease will improve and try simultaneously treat the congestive cardiac failure. Similarly, the stroke, if the atrial fibrillation is there, like evaluate whether patient is suitable for NOVAC, if there is no significant, no significantly low GFR. Otherwise, you can treat them with the vitamin K anticoagulants. So this is very, very important. Always evaluate and treat early. And when you treat early, most of the time you can control the symptoms and you manage patient compliance will be better and see that he is taking regular drugs adequately and periodically checking the electrolytes like a sodium imbalance, sodium potassium, any hyperkalemia, there hypernatremia. Both are double-edged swords. So if you are giving a diuretics, then hypernatremia patient can severe hypernatremia patient can develop convergence or patient may go into coma also. These patients and hyperkalemia, again patient can develop the in the renal failure, CKD. That if you don't address, patient may have complete heart block, patient may die suddenly. And these are very, very important. In addition to congestive failure, address diabetes, address CKD, and appropriately like a lung condition, all other conditions, endocrine abnormality, thyroid problem is there, and address the thyroid so that you can manage congestive care very effectively and efficiently to put the best possible outcome to the patient. Thank you one and all for paying attention to this talk. Okay. So, yeah, anything? Yeah, now it's. I think some connection problem is there. I'm unable to see anything. Anybody? Are you able to hear? Okay, finally, I thank you all of you for paying attention and please, uh, yeah, are you able to hear? I think no one is responding.
Okay, sir.
Now I'm closing
Okay, sir.
conclusions.
Thank you so much for your insightful talk.
Okay,
We conclude the session here, sir.
okay, thank you very
Okay, sir.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.